Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope everyone's doing well as usual. So believe it or not, I'm back for the third time this week just because I want to wrap up my 500 subscribers Q&A. So I'm not going to explain the background of that. By now everyone should know. Look at my previous videos if you don't. But you may know that I've already made 3 chapters of this. So today I intend for this to be the last one because it's been going on quite long enough. I'm sure for most people, but I've enjoyed answering everyone's questions. It's funny, in retrospect, perhaps I should have made it 1 question per person, but I didn't think a lot of people would join, so I was sort of pleasantly surprised that so many people did, and people asked some really interesting questions. So, as promised, I'm going to look at the commenters' questions today, just in no particular order, just as they appear down the feed of that original video. So, got quite a few questions to answer, but I'm going to incorporate it all in one video today. And obviously this goes without saying, but if you don't like these types of videos or you find them annoying, you don't have to watch. No one's forcing you. Okay, so yeah, without further ado, I'm not going to talk too much about the people who ask me questions because I just want to save time, but maybe a brief comment and that's it. All right, so the 3 questions I received from the Ninth Circle, that's Bill, who I just made a contest entry for the other day. So I've already spoken a lot about him. Bill is a great guy, really into his extreme music, and he asked me some interesting questions. The first of which was, what's your favorite new album of the year so far? As I mentioned, I'm not really the most up-to-date person when it comes to new releases, so date is kind of irrelevant. You know, I pick up music as I discover it, regardless of era, but if I had to choose one for this year, that's really hard to say, but I'd say in terms of big albums, probably the new Deicide album, Banished by Sin. I know that's really divided a lot of fans, but I think the production is excellent, the songs are catchy, and it's one of the best ones they've done in years. So if I had to pick one off the top of my head, yeah, Deicide, Banished by Sin. There were a few others I had in mind, but they actually came out last year, so yeah. Okay, and Bill's second question was, are there any bands you used to dislike but now like? That's interesting. I made that a question in my 400 subscribers contest. And I think I mentioned some bands there, but yeah, I have some new information for you. So first of all, I would say, in response to that, Bill, Cryptopsy. And you'll remember in my 400 subscribers contest, I said that was a band that I could never get into at the time. However, then I heard Cryptopsy's new album, what's it called? As Gomorrah Burns, or When Gomorrah Burns, something like that. But that absolutely blew me away, completely phenomenal, like high intensity, brutality and technicality, yet it's catchy at the same time. I just thought it was awesome. So that's made me realize maybe I should go back and listen to some earlier Cryptopsy albums. You may have heard me say in the past that I'm not really a fan of like overly technical music, but sometimes technical music can be done really well. And especially since this year I've gone to a lot of technical death metal gigs like Suffocation and Nile. I've always liked Nile, but yeah, got into Suffocation as well. So I think I should give this more technical style a chance. So yeah, Cryptopsy would be one band, and another band would be Napalm Death. So when I say that, I never actively disliked Napalm Death, but I just, you know, never really found the time to listen to them all that much. But in the last couple of years, I've got into a few of their albums, especially the ones from the 90s. I like those kind of death metal tinged ones, like Death by Manipulation, Harmony Corruption, Utopia Banished. I was familiar with the newer ones like Diatribes and everything, but yeah, I think Napalm Death is a good solid band. Like I even like the grindcore stuff. I own Scum, but yeah, I just think they were just one band that never really stood out to me, but lately I've come to appreciate them a lot more. So yeah, so those 2 bands, Cryptopsy and Napalm Death. And Bill's third question was, what do you miss most about Australia now that you live abroad? That's an interesting question. Not too much really, except I do miss the fact that Australia has 4 seasons, so you actually get winter and there's cold weather, which it may sound crazy, but like in Australia the winter's not as strong as say Canada, obviously. So like winter in Australia like ranges from about 5 to 15 degrees Celsius, so you know it's chilly and it's sharp, but it's not freezing cold. But yeah, obviously in Thailand we don't get proper winter. Like you get winter in December, January for anywhere between 10 days and a couple of weeks, and that's when the temperature gets down to about 25 degrees Celsius or 20, which is considered cold for Thailand. So yeah, I miss the 4 seasons and the cold weather in Australia. And also like the environment, like in Australia, you can go bushwalking, you know, out in the bushland and the forest, that kind of thing. I suppose every country has forests, but the landscape of Australia is unique, and especially my favourite place to go bushwalking was in the Blue Mountains, which is just a couple of hours west of Sydney. And I think it got its name because that was sort of the hue or the colour the landscape got, you know, because it was covered in trees. But yeah, really nice. So yeah, I miss the cold weather, the natural environment, and although in Thailand, you know, you can visit a lot of forests and mountains and everything, but it's just different because the climate's different here, like a lot hotter, basically. And another thing I miss about Australia is takeaway food shops, which that might sound strange. It's sort of like an Australian phenomenon. I suppose the British equivalent would be like what do they call them? A chipper or chippy? I can't remember, but you know, a place where you get deep fried unhealthy foods, basically. I think in America you'd call it a diner, but it's a bit different in the sense that a takeaway food shop in Australia, it's more like for takeout. So you go in and you order and you buy and you take it outside, except maybe there's one or two tables, but it serves all this traditional unhealthy food like hamburgers and chips, fish and chips, and all those delicious deep fried unhealthy things in the bain marie, like battered salves, you know, which are like battered sausages, potato scallops. And it's just got like, that's a very sort of old school thing about Australia, like it hasn't really changed in decades. But when I went back last time, I noticed that you don't see them as frequently, not that old fashioned style so much, but yes, I'm aware that the fact that the food is unhealthy, but it's hearty and delicious. And whenever I go back and I see a place like that, I think, yeah, I'm gonna definitely have a hamburger and chips there. So yeah, it's a bit different to the UK and US equivalent, but yeah, I miss those as well. So cold weather, natural environment, and takeaway food shops. Thanks for your questions, Bill. Okay, up next we have questions from Cavernous Carnage, or the Grim Influencer. That is of course Dave from Scotland, so you're probably familiar with him. He loves his extreme music on his channel, and when, you know, he's always talking about extreme music, showing it, and, you know, usually drinking a beer or having a smoke. Oh, I think, but he quit recently, so yeah, that's good. And as Mr. Boulder said, the swearing is legendary on his channel. Dave is the kind of person, he'll just tell it like it is. He won't candy coat something. So like his blunt description of things can be hilarious, especially coupled with the swearing. But so Dave asked me 3 questions. He said, what's your favorite record of all time? I did mention this actually in a former contest run by Johnny Mac, but it's probably no surprise to people who know me, but my favorite album of all time, if you're talking about metal, is Marduk, Those of the Unlight, which, this is the Shitty Osmos reissue, so you can't really see that very well. So what I will do is just show you the equivalent CD there. Yeah. So because I have a few questions to answer in this video, I won't go into this album in detail, but I will just say this. To me, it's the perfect black metal album, the perfect album. It's absolutely 10 out of 10. I know every single note, and every second of this album commands my attention. So that's my favorite metal album, Marduk, Those of the Unlight. I'll talk about it in more detail when I get to them in my collection. Okay, and my favorite rock album, as I've also said before, is Lick It Up by Kiss. This is when they went in a more sort of like speed metal metallic direction. That's thanks to the fresh and fierce guitar technique of new guitarist Vinnie Vincent at the time. He was an absolute shredder. But yeah, I love this album. It's 10 out of 10 or 8 out of 8. So I know some people don't like Kiss, but if you're a metalhead and you've never checked this album out, I would give it a chance. You might like it. So Kiss, Lick It Up. Okay, and Dave's second question was, what's your favorite gig ever? That's really hard because I've been to so many over the years, but I would have to say probably the most thrilling and exciting were festivals. So the first being Wacken in Germany. Back in the days when it was actually good, I went in the year 2000, so I was, you know, quite young at the time. I was 21, but that's when, you know, that black metal scene and death metal, you know, sort of like second wave of black metal was really exploding and taking off in Europe. And I was reading all these, you know, fanzines and everything. And for me, it was an absolute thrill to go to Wacken, because at the time in Australia, we didn't get bands like that playing there. You do these days, but not then. So I saw so many of my favorite bands there, including Dark Funeral, Immortal, Marduk, but there were honestly so many. Entombed played. Who else? Venom, 6 Feet Under. There are a lot of bands, yeah, so that was excellent. And also Graspop in 2015. Graspop is a festival which is, of course, in Dessel, Belgium. And again, I saw my 3 favorite big bands of all time, which were Kiss, Judas Priest and Scorpions, in addition to so many extreme metal bands as well, including Cannibal Corpse, Marduk. Who else? I saw Alice Cooper. God, the list goes on and on, but it just had all of this festival, Graspop 2015, had literally all of my favorite extreme metal bands in each genre, whether it was rock and metal, death metal and black metal, except Deicide didn't play, but pretty much every band that I like. And there was Psy, fantastic, yeah. And my other favorite one was Steelfest 2022. So I've been to Steelfest twice, and 2022 was the first time I went, and that was just amazing to see like a purist black metal concert in the cold of Finland. Great atmosphere at that place because it's run at an old wool factory. Like if you're a black metal fan, I would implore you to go. It's really good. Just for me, I went 2 years in a row. The second year wasn't as good, but the first year, it was still good though, but the first year was even better because I got to meet a lot of people who I had met in the YouTube community, like Nick from Motley Crue Forever, and also Norwegian Black Cult, and met a lot of Finnish metal fans, so that was really cool. Yeah, so there are three of my favorites there, like Wacken, Wacken 2000, Graspop 2015, and Steelfest 2022, and of course, so many other great bands that I've seen. Okay, and Dave's third question was, what's your favorite interaction with a band member you have met in person? That's interesting. I've met a lot of bands and band members over the year, but I would have to say probably the best interaction I had was with, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. Is it Ole? O-L-E, but he said his English nickname was OJ. He's better known as Apollyon, who obviously played with Immortal, and his main band is Aura Noir. The reason why that was a good interaction was because I didn't meet him at a meet and greet at a festival or anything like that. He was actually working in a pub in Oslo, and I went in there and just started talking to him about music, and he was a very down-to-earth person, like didn't big note himself and say, oh, I play in a band, I play in Aura Noir. And to be honest, at the time I was 21, I wasn't even familiar with who Aura Noir were. But we, just hang out and talking, and then I saw him at the pub with his friends the second night, one of which was Dagfinn of Nocturnal Breed, and it was really cool. Got to have drinks with them, and we were just talking about music. And he had a good sense of humor as well. Like he said, oh, James, why isn't your name Bruce? Because you're Australian. And like he asked me to teach him some slang, Aussie slang, which he found funny. Yeah, so he was just like very down to earth and not this like serious, posy, misanthropic person. He was just really laid back and cool. So yeah, I would say Apollyon, definitely top guy. And also some other memorable interactions were also Alex Webster from Cannibal Corpse. When I was walking around the streets in Netherlands in the year 2000, I just randomly bumped into 3 members of Cannibal Corpse, which were George Fisher, Alex, and Pat O'Brien, and they were there with their Dutch tour manager or something. But I saw them on the street and just spoke to them a bit, shook hands and everything. And then later on I bumped into them just randomly at a pub, and I spoke to all of them, and they were all really friendly. But especially Alex, he was very talkative, and I like the fact that he makes the effort to talk to fans. And yeah, so we were talking about music for a long time and just having a beer, so that was really cool. And George was very friendly as well, yeah. And also Nornegest from Enthroned, I met him at the Rebirth of Dissection gig in Belgium in the year 2004. I was traveling with my brother at the time, and I had some friends from Belgium who invited us to that concert. It was Enthroned, Watain, and Dissection, of course, at the concert. But Enthroned played first, but we were traveling with our friends, so we missed their performance. But Sabathan and Nornegest, hung around for the show, and we got to meet them. And yeah, both really cool, like got to get photos with them and everything. Sabathan was the sort of quieter one, but he was nice. But Nornegest was very sociable and outgoing, and we spoke to him for a long time. And again, he had a sense of humor too. So it's an urban myth that black metal band members don't have a sense of humor. No, he was really funny, and yeah, great outgoing guy. And he was saying things like, he said, oh, about cigarettes, can I have one of yours? Because he had roll your own tobacco. And it's like, oh, of course, you're not going to say no to Nornegest. But it was the fact he didn't have this rock star attitude. He didn't say, give me one or something like that. But yeah, that was, so they're my 3 most, the best interactions with band members: Apollyon, Alex Webster, and Nornegest. Okay. All right, up next, we're up to Mark G with a C. So thanks, Dave, for your questions. Mark G with a C. He asked me 3 questions as well. So he said, living in Asia, how easy is it to buy the music you're into in physical format, or is it pretty much online? Yes, I will say that sometimes, Mark, I do order stuff online, except it is very costly with the postage, and you might have seen me mention in my first Q&A, I said there's a place in Bangkok, Fortune Plaza, where you can buy a lot of metal and rock music, except a lot of that is old stuff or secondhand, but with the new stuff you can buy it, but it's extremely expensive. But I sometimes buy the secondhand items for sure. But what's made it easy for me is the fact that I have a friend in the south of Thailand, a Thai guy, and I think that's his business. He distributes music, like buys it and then sells it. So it's very easy with him. He just advertises albums that he's got available on Facebook, and then I just order through him. He orders them in and he just sends them internally, which is much cheaper than buying them import. So yeah, and I always make the joke with him, look, can you please stop getting cool stuff in, because I keep spending money. But yeah, I don't spend much on records these days, not compared to a lot of other YouTubers, but you know, like I'd say, you know, a couple a month, you know, 2 to 4 a month maybe. But yeah, he's always bringing cool stuff in, so that's the easiest way for me. And Mark's second question was, what album would you say is the most played and listened to album in your collection? So yeah, again, they would be these ones I mentioned before. So Marduk, Those of the Unlight, definitely. Always at least a few times a year. And the same with Lick It Up by Kiss, being my 2 ultimate all-time favorite albums. And what else? These are just some ones, like there's so many, but these are some other ones that I find myself frequently going back to. Also Creatures of the Night by Kiss, criminally underrated album from 1982. Again, if you're a metal fan, you will probably like this, because this one and Lick It Up, these are probably the 2 heaviest Kiss albums ever released, apart from Revenge as well. And I'd say another frequently played one is this, Under a Funeral Moon by Dark Throne, which is my favorite by them. Yep, so I play this one quite a lot. And of course, my favorite Immortal album, which is Diabolical Full Moon Mysticism. But there are so many more, but I would say these are probably the top 5 most played albums, and I listen to those frequently. Okay, and then Mark's third question was quite a morbid one, actually. He said, if you were on death row, what would you choose as your last meal and last drink? That's an interesting question. So obviously I hope that never happens, because that's pretty grim, but Am I allowed to choose multiple things? Let's just say, theoretically, I would be allowed to. I would say, I don't know, probably sounds very princess-like. They'll probably say, you get what you're damn well given. But imagine I could choose anything. I would say Mexican food, which is my favorite food. Also pizza. So it would be one or a combination of these. Isan food, which is that northeastern Thai food that I mentioned in the first episode of this. And also cevapi, which is a Serbian dish. It's sort of like deep fried, not deep fried like grilled sausages, but they're made with flour and baking soda, I think. But you know, they look a bit like squashed, crushed sausages, but they're absolutely delicious with chips. So yeah, I'd say one or a combination of those: Mexican, pizza, Isan food, and cevapi. And then for last drink, it would have to be beer of some description. But which type? Hard to say, but probably my favorite, the one that I drink most frequently, is Chang from Thailand. So it would probably be washed down with an ice cold Chang if it was up to me. But as I said, I hope that never happens. Okay, so thanks a lot for your questions, Mark. Up next, we have questions from Norwegian Black Cult from Estonia. So you're probably familiar with, and obviously Mark G with a C as well. Everyone knows him in the VC community. Massive death metal aficionado. And then Norwegian Black Cult. He's a black metal specialist, like mostly listens to that and is very knowledgeable about a lot of underground releases. So it goes without saying that when I'm talking about these people, you should subscribe to all of their channels because they're great. So Norwegian Black Cult's first question was, what are your top 3 sci-fi movies? Now, there is some debate as to whether some people might regard these as action, but technically they are sci-fi as well, in my opinion, and according to the internet as well. So first of all, I would say The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is the one where he gets, it's like set in around about the time now, but the state has become a police state, sort of the way society is going in general. But he gets framed for a crime he didn't commit, and then he's forced to participate on this deadly high-tech gladiatorial game show, you know, where the convicts are put on the show and these warriors called the Stalkers try to hunt them down and kill them. But just such a classic movie. I've got two versions here. They're similar, except here you've got Buzzsaw on the front. But yeah, if you like action and you like Arnold Schwarzenegger one-liners, you'll definitely enjoy this. But I just love the whole sci-fi futuristic concept and the film score. It's absolutely brilliant. And in some ways it's prophetic of the future. So that would be one of them. And another one has to be RoboCop. Like, this just never gets old to me. And again, this is sci-fi. It's kind of action or crime, you could say, but it's also sci-fi because it's set in the future and it's about a cop who is murdered by a criminal gang, and then he is used as the prototype for this robot-type police officer. It's half man, half machine, and then he goes out, you know, enforcing the law and hunting down the people who killed him, like initially as revenge, because he's revived back to life, you know, in some form of human tissue with the robotic component. But absolutely classic. Again, I don't just like the action in this, it's also like the whole concept of the way the future is set out and, you know, like the way the media is going and the way products are portrayed. It's interesting, and again, not entirely accurate when you look at today's society, but yeah, absolutely fantastic. And Kurtwood Smith, who plays Clarence Boddicker, he's got so many fantastic one-liners. He's the highlight of the movie, but there are so many quotable lines. So RoboCop. And probably my third favorite sci-fi movie is Predator, which also stars Arnold Schwarzenegger. I used to have that on DVD, but it got too scratched, unfortunately. So that's the one where he's in a military group and they're doing some operation, but there's this alien from outer space which is hunting down and slaughtering people in the jungle and slowly kills off his, what do you call it? His unit, like the other guys in his unit. So it comes down to just the two of them and they battle it out. But such a great, dark, scary film as well. So yeah, RoboCop, The Running Man, and Predator. Fuck. Sorry, the guy who lives a couple of doors down from me, he repairs motorbikes for a living, so he's just revving the engine now, but good on him. All right, and what else? If I was going to say another one, I also really like Back to the Future, as you know, the whole series of that. So yeah, just a good 80s classic, parts 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and Norwegian Black Cult's second question was, what's your favorite black metal logo? So I know it'll sound predictable, but yes, it is Marduk, which, as people have heard me say countless times, is my favorite black metal band, but I just love it. This is my favorite version of it. This is from the World Funeral album, which incidentally I find is not one of the ones I like the most, but I just love the way it's smartly presented here, purely in red, like the big inverted cross with the 666 and just the symmetry of the logo. And you know, sometimes you see it done like this, you know, with the two colors, but I think it's just such a brilliantly iconic logo, and also happens to be the best black metal band in my opinion. Yep, so that's definitely my favorite black metal logo. And Norwegian Black Cult's third question, show us your favorite metal t-shirt. Okay. All right, so I've just got a couple here, but I'd probably say this is my favorite. This is Vargrav with Reign in Supreme Darkness. So this is the Finnish black metal band, which plays symphonic black metal in the style of Emperor. So just, yeah, it's a very, very Emperor in the Nightside Eclipse-esque, and that logo is cool as well, almost like a picture of a castle. And on the back, you've got the main guy, what's his name? Vortex? No. That's the guy in Dimmu Borgir. Anyway, I can't remember his name, but yeah, it says Reign in Supreme Darkness. Very cool picture. Only problem with this one is it's very big on me, but I still wear it because it's a cool design. And probably followed closely by this one, Emperor Wrath of the Tyrant, you know, just such a classic band and album, iconic picture. And I also really like the back, the band members superimposed behind the pentagram. Yeah. All right, and Norwegian Black Cult also said, talking about suggestions, he said, I would actually like to see something connected to the local Thai metal scene. Maybe local black metal bands releases, if they are good, of course. And yes, I do like a few Thai extreme metal bands. I've mentioned in a couple of videos now, I'm not sure if you saw those, but I said some of my favorite Thai metal bands are Surrender of Divinity and Zygosis, and they are both black metal or black metal bordering on war metal, in addition to Savage Deity, which is sort of like old school death thrash, similar to early Morbid Angel. Also Old Skull, which is slow, heavy, crushing death metal, sort of a bit like Dismember. And then Carnivola, which is a death thrash band, which takes a lot of influence from Sepultura. But yeah, and through my collection, I do have some of those albums, so I will talk about them as I get to them. So, Norwegian Black Hole had those 3 questions and 1 suggestion, so thanks very much. Okay, how are we going for time? Not too bad. Okay, so the next set of questions was from Clayton Bjork, and I don't think he has a channel actually, but he comments on my videos quite a lot, so thanks very much. I really appreciate the support. And I think I remember him saying he was from Australia too. So his first question, he asked me, where in Australia are you originally from? Sydney, yeah. So everyone knows about Sydney, probably. Like, I'll give you some famous landmarks. Sydney Harbour, the Harbour Bridge, the Opera House, the beaches, yes. And if you're from Melbourne, please don't be offended by my answer. When I say that, it's just a joke. As Maddox Deep Shadow said, there's kind of a rivalry between the cities of Melbourne and Sydney. When that revving stops. Yeah, a bit like the north and the south of England, but it's not very serious. But however, I will say this, that people from Melbourne always pick on us. Like, maybe there's jokes, but I always find like 90% of the people I've ever met from Melbourne, when they ask me where I'm from and I say Sydney, there's one of 2 possible answers they'll give. The first one is, like in a disdainful tone. And the second one is, it's not your fault. Jesus Christ, Sydney is not that bad. And by the way, when I meet someone from Melbourne, I don't do that. I just say, oh, right, okay. But anyway, there you go. Yes, lived in Sydney most of my life before coming here. Yeah, so there you go. And it's really not that bad. So if you think about visiting Sydney, it is quite a nice city. Yeah. Okay, and Clayton's second question is, Clayton, and where are you from? No, I'm not even going to guess. I was going to say, I think it was this, but I really can't remember. And Clayton's second question was, is the high humidity in Thailand a problem with mold forming on your vinyls? I've heard it can be a problem living in high humidity places. Do you need to keep the room at a certain temperature with aircon to prevent mold forming? For me, no, it's not really a problem. Like the place I'm living in now, it's quite a spacious house, and even though the temperatures are very hot outside, it's sort of off from the street, so it's quite cool. And I keep my vinyls downstairs so the heat's not rising. So not really, like I keep all the vinyls wrapped as well, but I certainly haven't noticed any damage, and there's no immediate exposure to the sun either. So no, downstairs I don't even have aircon, like just a fan, which you can probably hear in the background, but no, luckily it's not too bad. But I think, whereas if I kept them upstairs, it could be a problem because the rooms get pretty hot there, so I just always keep them at the lowest level. And Clayton's third question was, what are your 2 favorite black metal releases of the last 5 years, off the top of your head? Yeah, so I really didn't think about that one too much, but you know, when I think off the top of my head, I just had to pause to go and get the actual albums because I forgot to do that because they're from the top of my head. But first of all, Vargrav with The Nighthold. I was talking about this one recently in a collection update. So this is Vargrav. I also showed the t-shirt by them. That's a Finnish band which emulates the symphonic style of Emperors in the Nightside Eclipse. And on this album, they built on it with a kind of enthroned darkness, triumphant keyboard sound of Dimmu Borgir. And no, it's not Sellout, it's just absolutely magnificent. I thought that took it to the next level. So I'm really impressed by this album, and I know a lot of people did not like it and were disappointed. Honestly, I can't see why. I think it was even better than the earlier releases. But there you go. So that's the first one, Vargrav with The Nighthold. And I suppose another one would be another Finnish band. This is Satanic Warmaster with Armengarda, just because it was a long time since this band released anything, nearly 10 years actually, but when he finally released this album, it did not disappoint. It was that solid, cold Finnish black metal sound with that familiar ambience which Satanic Warmaster has, and his ability to craft these amazing, catchy, emotive riffs. And I really like that track. What's the last one? Barbus Ex Armon, but yeah, quality black metal. You can't go wrong with Satanic Warmaster. And then in addition to that, I'd probably say the new Varathron. Yeah, the Crimson Temple. But yeah, that's in the last 5 years. Yeah, but again, there are so many great releases coming out, but these are probably just 3 that stuck in my head. Okay, and yes, we're definitely going to finish this today. So I've got my last set of questions, guys. So thanks very much, Clayton. Now, the last set of questions are from Gus from Brazil. So like Simon Pieface said, Simon says, I'm not sure how to pronounce your full name, so I'm just going to say Gus. I hope that's all right, Gus or Guz. Yeah, so Gus is from Brazil, and he's got a successful YouTube channel as well, and he asked me some really interesting questions. So he said, first of all, what, in your opinion, are the most underrated Australian metal bands? So again, I'm not the most up-to-date guy, so my answers to this question are based on quite old bands. But in Australia now, as most people know, like with death metal and black metal, Australia is just exploding with quality bands at the moment. So I think if you want to know more about that, the best people's channels to watch would probably be Simon, Explosive Action, and Mattox, Deep Shadows. They're very up-to-date and savvy with all like the modern black and death metal bands. But for me, two of my favorite and underrated bands from Australia, the first one I would have to say is this black metal band called Meardral, and I think they're from Canberra. And I could be wrong, but I think this was the only album they ever released. But it's kind of like, how would I describe it? It's black metal, definitely, like in the sort of old school vein, you know, taking influence from those second wave Norwegian bands. But there's also a psychedelic element to it too, with the acoustic guitars. And often I'm reminded of bands like early Ulver and Agalloch. So if you like that sort of like blasting old school black metal, second wave of black metal sound, which is quite Nordic, even though the band's Australian, yeah, you'll like that. And they have interludes of acoustic guitars and somber pieces. And yeah, what's the really good track on this album? Oh, well, there's a couple, Dumais Wells and Blood on the Mountain. But if you get a chance to check this out, definitely do so. So this is Meardral with Blood on the Mountain. So yeah, and absolutely, I think the most underrated metal band from Australia is this band, which is Cohort from South Australia. So you may have heard me talk about this band in a collection update earlier this year. They're a death metal band from Whyalla, Australia. And this is just incredibly original and catchy death metal. Like I bought this in about February or March this year, and honestly, this is my most played album of the year. Like there's something about it, I don't know what it is, but it just keeps drawing me back to listen to it, just because it's incredibly catchy to the point of, you know, it's almost like listening, the music's for extreme metal, but it's as catchy as rock music, honestly. Like just so original. They don't, and like I said, I can't really compare them to anyone, but if I had to, maybe aspects of early Gorguts and Suffocation, but it's not as technical as Suffocation, but they really just have their own sound, and they actually formed on the backbone of a thrash metal band. But if you listen to their one and only album, Drawn and Quartered, you will love it if you're a death metal fan. And they did make one other album called Reflections of Madness, but it was never released, unfortunately. But hopefully the label which is now managing them, which is, The Crypt Dark Symphonies. Yeah, Ted, he sold me this one, and they're going to release this album on vinyl too. So if you're looking for underrated Australian death metal, definitely check out Cohort with Drawn and Quartered. All right, and Gus's second question was, how often do you blind buy nowadays? If so, pick a good or bad experience. I would say I don't really blind buy all that often, except sometimes, you know, in Bangkok when there's a second-hand, in the second-hand section, there might be something really cheap, and I might say, oh, I'll give that a go, I've heard of this band. But yeah, I've had pretty good luck recently. Like does it count as a blind buy if you know the band but not the album? I don't know, but with those I've had good luck lately. Let me see, like an example was Keel. I'd never really heard of them, but then I saw the album for sale. But when I heard their cover of Because the Night by Bruce Springsteen and the rest of the album, I went and bought that. So technically not a blind buy, but it was a band I didn't know. And I guess a bad experience I had with blind buying was I bought the Lemonheads self-titled album just a few weeks ago, actually. And obviously Lemonheads isn't metal, but I've strangely been a fan of them over the years, you know, for something different if you like alternative rock. And not saying that the self-titled album was bad, but it just hasn't grown on me yet. So there were some of their mid-period, most famous albums, they wrote some really catchy music. And this one, I wouldn't say it's a bad experience, but it's just taking time to grow on me. But yeah, I still don't consider that a waste of time, because like I said in Bill's video, sometimes music takes a while to grow on you. So buying something, you invest the time to listen to it again. So I think in general, blind buying is a good experience. Yeah. Okay, and Gus's third question is, what was the latest album by a Brazilian band that you bought? Okay, only a few months ago actually, I rebought this back into the collection, but Crisian with Conquerors of Armageddon. So I think, no, this wasn't their first album. First one was Black Force Domain. But yeah, this was a classic. I remember it was the first one I ever heard back in 2000, and I used to own it on CD, but some years later I sold it because I just didn't get into it much. But I think that was a rash decision. I bought this back and I absolutely love it. Yeah, a lot of people say it's hard to discern between the songs, but I just love the relentless blasting and the death metal assault of this band. So good, yeah. So many great songs on this. And yeah, I don't think I need to own all of their albums, but I think this is their most classic. So yes, but I also like a lot of other Brazilian bands, but sort of the ones most people know, I guess, like Sepultura, Sarcophago, Mystifier, that kind of thing. But just wondering, Gus, you might be able to answer this. How do you pronounce this band name? Because I always read it as Crisian, but when I met some Brazilians over at Wacken in 2000, they pronounce it as Crisian, like as in vision or something like that. And I also heard some Europeans say Crisian. So is it Crisian or Crisian? Either way, great band. Yep, so that was the last album by a Brazilian band that I bought. Okay, so thanks a lot for your questions, Gus. So believe it or not, guys, that wraps it up. So I've answered everybody's questions, I hope, unless I missed somebody, but I checked pretty carefully. So if I have missed your questions, let me know ASAP. But as far as I know, that wraps it up. So thank you very much, everyone, for your patience. Now that I've answered all of your questions, I will do the draw in another video in the near future. So thanks a lot, everyone, for your questions. I really enjoyed answering them. I hope you enjoyed my answers in today's video and in general. And yeah, it's just been a fun contest. So thank you very much to everyone participating. And what else can I say? No, you're just all fantastic. So yeah, the draw probably won't be in the next video, but one in the near future, and then we'll see who's the lucky winner. So thanks a lot, guys, and thanks for watching. I will see you shortly in the next video. Cheers, bye.